420RADIO.com. It's time for the 420 Radio News, covering the latest headlines in consumer cannabis, medical marijuana, and industrial hemp. Transcripts of 420 Radio News are available daily on our website at 420radio.org. Now, here's Priscilla Simon.
Hi, this is your 420 Radio News for Thursday, June 12th, 2014. Taxation of marijuana by the states of Colorado and Washington amounts to a violation of the Fifth Amendment. That's the stand taken by activist marijuana attorneys in those states who are suing to have those states' marijuana taxation regulations declared null and void. In Colorado, attorney Rob Corey argues that when growers and sellers pay Colorado marijuana taxes, they effectively incriminate themselves of the federal crimes of marijuana cultivation and trafficking. Quote, "In my mind, overtaxation is just as bad as prohibition," end quote, Mr. Corey told Denver 9's News. In Washington, attorney Douglas Hyatt, who opposed Washington's I-502 legislation initiative, is presenting a similar argument. His client, a medical marijuana dispensary owner, is being prosecuted by Washington State for criminal distribution of marijuana and failure to pay taxes in it. Mr. Hyatt argues that paying the taxes would incriminate his client on the distribution charge, thus violating Fifth Amendment rights against self-incrimination. Justice officials in Colorado and Washington dismissed the suits as frivolous, with little chance of being upheld.
Sorry about that, Priscilla. I messed up on the pronoun there, his Fifth Amendment rights. But yeah, this is a little disturbing to me, right? Because part of what's selling marijuana legalization in the other states is taking a look at the millions of dollars Colorado's bringing in taxes, and soon to be Washington will bring in taxes. If these suits are successful, the states of Colorado and Washington won't be able to tax marijuana, and no other state afterward would be able to tax marijuana until the federal government decides that it's legal. Now, fortunately, there's already been numerous Supreme Court decisions that have found that, yes, indeed, states can tax things that are illegal. That's how they've been able to bring tax charges against marijuana producers and sellers, even when it wasn't legal, even as it's been illegal for years and years and years. And the folks looking at this in both Washington and Colorado, the legal experts, don't really expect much to come out of these challenges. In Washington State, Allison Holcomb from the ACLU, who wrote I-502, points out that it's always been that the tax that's going on in Washington State is not a tax on marijuana, it's a tax on sales. And that when the state turns in its sales revenue, it doesn't have to tell anybody where that revenue came from, and therefore it wouldn't be a Fifth Amendment violation. We shall see how these suits pan out, and we'll give you the updates just as soon as they are settled.
Right. Wenatchee is the battleground for determining whether local governments can ban the soon to open legal pot shops in Washington State. A local businessman seeking to open a pot shop is suing the city over its zoning code, which states that all Wenatchee businesses must comply with federal law. The mayor of Wenatchee has begged the city council to strike the word federal from the code, but the council decided 4-3 to affirm the code language as is. The mayor fears the city's legal costs in defending such ban, which could resolve the state and federal conflicts over legal marijuana businesses if the case makes it all the way to the Supreme Court. The council meets tonight to decide whether to follow through with defense of the lawsuit. The state attorney general has issued a non-binding opinion that localities do have the right to ban legal pot shops, which at least 10 Washington cities have already done, and another 69 cities and 12 counties have enacted temporary pot shop moratoriums.
Boy, this completely goes against the point of passing I-502 in Washington State. If Wenatchee's going to come here and challenge this and make it settled that that localities can ban pot shops, it goes against the stated objective of I-502, which was to rein in the black market, which was to eliminate the black market eventually and allow the state to collect taxes on the market that exists, the marijuana market. If localities are allowed to ban these pot shops, then that doesn't mean the people in those cities stop smoking pot. It just means they continue with the black market dealers, or they try to find a way to get medical so that they can get into the medical marijuana dispensaries. These localities have such a small view of what's going on in marijuana legalization. It's all NIMBYism. It's all not in my backyardism, NIMBYism. They just fear the stereotypes and the prejudice and the bigotry that has been calculated against marijuana consumers for so many years that they really are just banning something that's in their imaginations. If they would take a moment and look at the places in Colorado that have embraced these pot shops and actually seen the taxation, the results of which have helped improve neighborhoods, helped reduce crime. Now in Colorado, Priscilla, if I'm not mistaken, you do have the power to, it's explicit that they can ban pot shops, but that's not the case in Washington, right?
Right, yeah, I know that some cities in particular have banned pot shops, and so what the stores do is they end up posting up at the county line, in particular, at the city line, you know, which it follows code and zoning, you know, in accordance with it. But yeah, it's explicitly stated you can ban it if you don't want it, if it's, you know, around schools and stuff. You know, we have the best in mind for everybody.
Yeah, it's interesting how these two states will pan out, with Colorado having the explicit ban and Washington not having an explicit ban. Let's hope that the Washington suit doesn't work and we are able to open pot shops all across the Evergreen State.
Right. And coming home, officers with the Denver Police Department have recently been plagued with violence and child porn charges. Denver Police Chief Robert White is blaming alcohol abuse. Quote, in March, a spokesperson for the police department was suspended when photos of nude women were found on his police cell phone. In April, a detective working Vice was allegedly caught soliciting prostitution. In May, a police officer resigned after accusations of his possession of over 20 child pornography videos. In June, an officer was charged with trespassing and child abuse over a brawl that occurred at a detective's home. The detective was charged with brandishing his weapon during the fight. And on Sunday, another detective was arrested on charges of domestic violence, child abuse, reckless endangerment, and prohibited use of weapons.
Wow, Priscilla, you got some cops there in Denver, huh?
Jeez, people being menace to society. You're supposed to protect us, guys.
Yeah, really. Not supposed to be committing the crimes. I love the Denver police chief blaming this on alcohol abuse. Yeah, it's got to be the alcohol abuse. It couldn't be, you know, really poor hiring practices and background checks, could it?
Yeah.
No, got to be the booze.
Let's get a screening process.
I have an idea. How about we hire more pot smoking cops instead of drinking cops? Maybe we can get a little less child abuse and child pornography going on there in Denver. Man.
Yeah, I get high and forget about that stuff.
I guess so. What a terrible, terrible story. And again, we'll keep tabs on this, see what happens as these guys get prosecuted.
Right. New York may become the 23rd medical marijuana state next week, according to the bill's Senate sponsor. Quote, we will have a final product in time for the end of this legislative session, end quote, said Senator Dianne Savino as three-way talks between the Senate, House, and Governor's office began Wednesday evening. Governor Andrew Cuomo says he supports the idea of medical marijuana, but still has some reservations about Senator Savino's bill. Under Savino's Compassionate Care Act, patients would qualify under the most common conditions covered in medical marijuana states, like cancer, HIV, AIDS, and epilepsy, but others, such as glaucoma, chronic pain, and severe nausea, will not qualify. No medicated candy or soda will be allowed, and minor patients will be barred from smoking marijuana. Patients will not be allowed to grow their own medicine and must shop at state dispensaries, which will limit purchases to 2.5 ounces of marijuana per month, taxed at 7%.
Yeah, it's more that East Coast, no homegrown, severely limited medical marijuana they're trying to get past there in New York. They think, I believe next Friday is the end of their legislative session, so they got the rest of this week and then next week to get this passed. But there's so much political pressure, what with all the kids with the CBD oil and the patients coming to the State House and fighting for this. It's passed the Assembly. I think it's passed in the New York Assembly like 5 times already. The hiccup is always getting it past the Senate, but now Savino says she's got the votes there in the Senate to get this passed. I think Andrew Cuomo is probably going to sign this. It's got enough restriction in it, not allowing chronic pain, glaucoma, or nausea, no home grow, 2.5 ounces per month limits. It's just perfect for that East Coast box canyon medical marijuana style that we've become used to.
Yeah, that's a step in the right direction. Hershey's, the Pennsylvania candy bar maker, is suing Colorado edibles manufacturer and a Washington medical marijuana dispensary for trademark infringement. The suits involve the manufacture and sales of marijuana-infused products that bear a striking resemblance to Hershey's non-medicated candy bars, including Reefer's Peanut Butter Cup, a ripoff of Reese's, Mr. Dink Bar, like Mr. Good Bar, Ganja Joy, mimicking Almond Joy, Hash Heath, copying the Heath Bar, and Dabby Patty, similar to the York Peppermint Patty. Hershey's complains the packaging illegally infringes on their trademarks and may lead someone to, quote, inadvertently ingest the medicated products. A spokesperson for the Washington dispensary claims, quote, no reasonable juror, end quote, would ever believe a dispensary that sells only medicated products would think they're buying an unmedicated Hershey's product.
All right, so this is just rank stupidity on the part of these people that are making these edibles. One of the big problems we've got, in fact, I was just reading in Alaska, where the anti-legalization forces up there called Big Marijuana, Big Problem, are pointing out BHO and medicated candy bars as the two number ones? Anyway, the 2 biggest scaremongering complaints they've got against marijuana legalization. And with all the hype and fright over kids mistaking a medicated candy for a real candy, it certainly doesn't help anything when you're ripping off the trademarks of established candy bars to make your medicated edibles. This is just no good for the legalization movement, no good for the medical movement, and I certainly hope Hershey prevails in this so that other edibles makers will finally learn the lesson. Don't steal trademarks and try to mimic real candy bars.
Yeah. The new study out of Europe shows that the children of strict overbearing parents are more likely to smoke, drink, and toke. The European Institute of Studies on Prevention interviewed over 7,000 adolescents from Spain, Sweden, the Czech Republic, the UK, Slovenia, and Portugal to determine which type of parenting style best kept children from initiating drug use. Quote, our results support the idea that extremes are not effective, lead researcher Amador Calafat told the journal Drug and Alcohol Dependence. Quote, neither authoritarianism nor absence of control and affection, end quote. When it comes to protecting children from drugs, Calafat explained that parents who reasoned with their kids about abstaining from drugs had the best outcomes, and that, quote, a good relationship with children is paramount.
What? What? Talking to your kids like they're intelligent and they can understand reason works better than just say no and grounding them? Priscilla, who would have thought such a thing, that you could talk to your kids about drugs?
Oh, geez, that's only like logic, right? Adult logic. You got to find a balance somewhere, and I'm glad somebody found it.
I'm glad.
Either the other, no bueno.
That's right. Oh, but speaking of bueno, it's 420 right out there in Colorado. You've got to take your union-mandated safety break. Wouldn't want to keep you from it, Priscilla.
I appreciate that, Russ.
All right. We'll talk to you tomorrow when we come back.
Bye-bye.
Behind the headlines, we're going to take a look at Florida's medical marijuana campaign. You're listening to 420radio.org, and this is The Russ Belville Show. .420 Radio, freeing your mind 24 hours a day. Adam Hand of Handmade Apparel produces